Makers! I'm Helena and I'm here from Minerva to talk to you about one of my favourite pattern companies, Sew Over It. So today I'm talking about Sew Over It. I have 12 patterns to talk you through and to talk you through what Sew Over It is. So Sew Over It is an indie brand company that started in 2011 in May by Lisa Comfort, and she sort of started this sewing pattern company in response to there being not many indie pattern designers out there. Their instructions of the big four can be not so great for beginners, so this company and this sort of company is a great place to start if you're a beginner or if you just need a little bit more help getting through learning how to sew. On a personal note, this brand, Sew Over It, is probably the reason that I learnt to sew. If you're wondering what I'm wearing, this is a Minerva fabric and this is a Sew Over It pattern. I'll just give you a quick peek. This fabric is a satin and this is the Eve dress. So the patterns that I have to talk you through, I've got 12 of them here. So the first one is the 1940s wrap dress. So the style of Sew Over It patterns, as you will see when I go through these 12 patterns that I mentioned, they're very like vintage, but like with a modern flair. So they've got that cute vintage sort of 40s, 50s, 60s even style, depending on the pattern, but they've got a bit of a more wearable, modern look to them. This pattern I haven't actually yet sewn up myself. It's the 1940s wrap dress. As it sounds, it's inspired by the 1940s, but more of a modern flair, like I was saying before. I do believe it has little gathers at the top edges and around the waistband with a bit of a lapel type collar across the front. I'll insert some pictures from our website and as well of some of Lisa's that she's made. I have not made this one yet. I really do plan to. I have been intending to, but it's one of those things, you don't get around to it yet. It's hard to get time to make them all. This one, so the fabric suggestions, so the aim of this one, we've got one to suggest for you. It's a viscose fabric, so a lightweight fabric, very drapey, very like, what a weird way to describe, but it is a lightweight fabric that does have a bit of drape. You're not wanting a really stiff fabric. So we've got the indigo version here in a nice, it's like a blue color. We do have it in other colors. I personally do like the indigo as well, but I could see this in many of the other colors. You're also going to need a little bit of interfacing, which we can pop there as well. And you're going to need two 21mm buttons or a press stud. As for the sizing, we have it in 8 to 20. You can make it in different sleeve lengths as well. They've got the mid 3/4 length or the shorter length. As for the difficulty of the pattern, it is put into the intermediate category, but I would say that would depend on what kind of fabric you're using. You don't have any zippers, you don't have any funky stuff like that. But you do have gathering, you do have setting in a sleeve that can be a bit finicky, and also depending on the fabric that you go for, it could be easier or harder. So if you're going for something like the one that we recommended, that's sort of in the middle of the range, but if you're going for something really drapey and really silky and slippery, that's definitely going to add to your difficulty. But the fabric that we've suggested, it shouldn't be too hard to work with. It's kind of like a step up from a cotton lawn. It's going to be a little bit lighter or a little bit slipperier, just a little bit if you've never worked with rayon or, viscose before. It is slightly bit different to working with cotton. But it gives such, rayon, viscose, it feels so lovely on the skin, and it's such a lovely fabric to just feel. So the next pattern I have made, it is the Sew Over It Betty dress. So this is like a classic fit and flared dress. This is that 1950s-esque style. It's very nice. So I have made this a long time ago. I can put a picture of that up if you want to see what it looks made up on somebody my size. But it comes from the size 8 to the size 20. I was on the lower end of the size 8, so you may need to take a tiny bit in if you're on that sort of edge. But yeah, it does go all the way up to size 20. So this is a very classic dress. I love the V neckline at the back, or backline, but it does require a lot of fabric. So one of the fabrics we've suggested, for instance, is this Rose and Hubble cotton fabric, cotton poplin. So in particular the colour black, it has the black with the pink florals, very sort of like vintagey vibes. So if you were to use that fabric, according to the Sew Over It size chart, you would need at least 4.5 meters, because this skirt is a lovely, ginormous, twirl, extravagant photos kind of dress. It has a bigger skirt than it really seems when you first look at it. It is fun. You can do a giant twirl in this skirt. So, like you can obviously see from the technical sketch, it's just got a straight bust darts at the edge, and then it's got the straight darts across up from the seam of the waist. As for the difficulty of this pattern, the difficulties lie if you've never put a zip in before, but the good thing about this pattern is you can use a really lovely stable cotton like we've suggested, the Rose and Hubble cotton, which does come in other colours by the way, if you want to check them out as well by clicking the links. Yeah, this fabric is definitely the kind of fabric I personally would choose. I have a bit of a floral problem, which you may see from my dress here. So for the fabric amount, you can see on the back, you're going to need a lot for this fabric project. For instance, the fabric that we mentioned, the Rose and Hubble cotton, you're going to need at least, depending on your size, up to 4.5 meters. If you're interested in making this one, comment below, make an account, and let us know. So the next pattern is the Sew Over It Chloe coat. So I have made this pattern once. That fabric actually is from us as well. So if you've never made a coat before, this is a really good beginner coat. Really, it's very simple. So it's more of a straight fitted coat. It's a little bit looser on the edges, edges on the waist sort of area, more of a straighter cut, and it has sort of a scoop neckline, not a lapel or anything like that. It has two little patch pockets, which I think are really cute. You can put a little fun contrast lining on the inside. So like I mentioned earlier, I would put this in the category, we would put this in the category of an easy coat. Not easy as in the first project you ever make, but if you've sewn some things before and you want to move on to coats, this is a great place to start. So as for the fabric suggestions, so we've got here in a boiled wool fabric, the Cerise pink fabric. I'm a big fan of pink. Probably could tell, it's a bit red, a bit pink actually, but you can probably tell that I'm a big fan of that, for instance. So if you'd really like to use a wool fabric, this is a great option. If you want to see other colours, you can click through to that. It does come in many other colours. So also for this one, you're going to need some lining fabric. The other thing you're going to need is interfacing, and you're going to need a heavyweight interfacing for coats. You're also going to need either ice wool or wadding, which is just sort of a thicker, like fabric, I guess you could say, wadding, that's to shape the edges of the coat. So you're also going to need to choose between, are you going to put a zipper in, or are you going to put snaps in? And so the snaps that you need to use are 21 millimeters. So for the fabric amounts, I'll pop that on the screen now. You're going to need the outer shell fabric, you're going to need the lining, and you're going to need the interfacing. And you can see there, in relation to the size chart, what you personally will need based on your measurements. If this inspired you to make a coat, then let us know. We'd love to see it. So the next one by Sew Over It, of course, is the Sew Over It Cocoa Jacket. So this pattern I personally do own, but I haven't made it yet, but I want to. So as the name may suggest, it's a Coco Chanel inspired style jacket. So it's the sort of tweed, it's sort of slightly cropped, very fitted style, very slim to the body, with the sort of tweed style fabrics. Yeah, I'm very keen to make this. I've been meaning to get around to it, but I just haven't. I have heard that it is quite slim on fit wise, because all of Sew Over It patterns usually are drafted with not a lot of ease, because the style and the whole intention of it is to be a very fitted, flattering sort of effect in her patterns. That's what she said. So you need fabrics that are a medium to heavyweight fabrics. So not just a cotton, you need something that's more closer to a coat, that sort of thing. Things like tweed, jacquard, boiled wool, that sort of thing. So as for the size range, it comes again from the 8 to the 20, and I'll put those chart measurement up on the screen, of course. So as for the difficulty, it is an open jacket, so you don't actually need a zipper, but it is a fully lined jacket, so that's a bit of an expedition. But it isn't something that isn't achievable by a intermediate, of course. But if you're looking to make a jacket, I'd say this is on the easier end. There's no zippers, there is a lining. That's the hardest part, I would say. But if you've not done lining before, this is a great opportunity to start. For example, we've got an example of a tweed coating to go with the whole Chanel-esque vibe. So you're also going to need interfacing. So for some fabrics you may need to interface the whole bodice, but others you may not, depending on how heavy your fabric is. You might need to face the whole thing, interface the whole thing. Also, a great interesting thing is with some tweeds, you can use the selvage on the edges for that Chanel-esque effect, which you can see in the pattern. So that's the Cocoa Jacket. So the next one is the Sew Over It Doris dress. So this one's more of a 1950s style. So this one comes in the 2 lengths. You can make it in 2 different lengths. It is a button up front, or a faux button up front really. You can get away with that. So it is a panelled skirt. It also has the ties at the back, so you can leave it out a bit more room, or you can tie it up at the back for a bit more of a fitted look. I personally have made this dress. I made it in a fabric that had a slight bit of out of stretch. You're not supposed to use stretch with this fabric. So as for the size range, again it comes from the 8 to the 20. As for the recommendations of the fabric, you're going to need something like a viscose, rayon, crepe, something that's a lightweight cotton, something that's not too heavy and going to weigh it down. So now a great example for a fabric that you could use is this Lady McCroy, this viscose fabric in the smoky blue. So this will be nice and light and soft to touch. Rayon and viscose fabrics are really lovely on the skin. I really like that color of the blue also. It's kind of like a cornflower blue. As for the fabric amount, you're going to need anywhere between 2.1 up to 3.2 depending on what size you make, how long you want it to be, and how wide your fabric is. So the next pattern is the Sew Over It Elsie dress. So this pattern is a pattern dress, obviously. So you can make the dress, or you can just make the skirt. So it's a pleated, big wide pleats, and it also seems to have a princess bodice. I've never made this one. I have been intrigued by it. I think it's supposed to be more of a party type dress, or a going out event. So as for the size range, it obviously comes from the 8 to the 20, like I said. For this one you are going to need a bit of fabric, and you do need to line it. So like she says, the Elsie dress is designed for advanced beginners to intermediate sewers who've made a couple garments before. Definitely if you've made the Betty dress before, you can totally give this one a go. The difficulty in this one is getting the fit right, because it is a structured fitted garment. If it's a bit too loose, then it's going to be a little bit like this. But that's the hardest part of that, really. So this Elsie dress is a great idea for those special fabrics that you have. Brilliant brocades, cottons, stretch cottons, silk dupion, taffeta. You want to choose something that's got a bit of body, that's a bit of structure to it, because then it will hold the pleats well and it will hold its shape a little bit more. So we can give you an example of what we have here. So for example, the Jardin cotton sateen fabric in the blue, which you can see here, would be a great suggestion for this pattern. It does also come in the green. So that leads us to the next pattern, which is what I'm actually wearing, is the Eve wrap dress. So this pattern, it comes in 2 lengths, 2 different sleeves. I use the fluted sort of, you can see, flowy effect sleeve, flounce, flare, flutes, but you can also make it in a straighter arm length. I believe it's slightly longer than 3/4, or about at the elbow. Personally, I like this version because it leaves a lot of room and air to flow through a really beautiful summer dress. So as for the size range, like all the other patterns, it's from the 8 to the 20, which I will have up now. So this one uses a fair amount of fabric, again depending probably on the length that you want, and if you use sleeves, if you use these shorter sleeves. This one can go from 3.2 all the way up to 3.9. The fabric I'm using this in now is a silk satin, but we have a great example of a linen look crepe fabric. I have also made it in a crepe fabric, which I'll pop up here to give you an example of what crepe might look like. This lovely crepe that we can suggest for you is a linen look crepe. It's more of a pink. It is a medium weight crepe, but it does have a white background, so you may need to be careful of what underwear you wear under it. Alternatively, you could line it with another crepe fabric or a traditional lining fabric. I probably wouldn't use traditional lining fabric, but or more of this fabric, but like, you can line this dress. What I've actually done with this pattern, it doesn't come with lining, but what I just did is I made the dress twice and then I essentially sewed them together. I really should have understitched the edges here so it sort of stayed in a bit more, but alas, I did not. Also, making it slightly smaller, a few mils smaller, will keep it then the actual outer dress would help it stay on the inside, but of course I didn't know that at the time. Actually I did, I probably just skipped it. But yeah, no, I want that fabric. I think that would look amazing in the Eve dress. So that leads us on to the next pattern, which is the 1960s Joan dress. I have not made this one before. I want to, but I haven't. So obviously this comes from a size 8 to 20, like all of the other patterns. Apparently this was based on the wardrobe of Mad Max's iconic Joanne Holloway. So it has a fitted bodice with the skirt. So the bodice is fitted with darts at the waist and the shoulders, and it also has a scoop neckline. Intention is for it to hit slightly below the knee, and it fits slightly fitted with a kick pleat at the back to give some more walking room. So this one is a whole fully lined, so this is a serious number. She's not messing around. So I would put this in a slightly more of the difficult category. They do suggest that you've done invisible zippers before, because visible zippers can be a bit funny. It kind of makes me think of something that I'd wear to like a cold wedding. Like elegant, sophisticated, but also just a little bit different. So as for the fabric recommendation, we've got a great recommendation by Lady McElroy. Sydney stretch suiting fabric. So we have it here in the deep red, which is a lovely, luscious, deep red suiting fabric. So you need some sort of more of a structured, heavier weight fabric. This one, for instance, is more of a heavier weight. It does have a little bit of spandex in there, so it does give it a little bit of a stretch. So you can squeeze in a bit more, makes it a little bit more comfortable. It does come in other colours if you want to check that out too. So Over It recommends triple weight crepe, which we actually do have at Minerva, which we can put there as well. So the next pattern I have is the Marguerite dress. So this is a great dress for summer. It has sort of slightly grown on sleeves, but then a little bit of a cuff at the end. It does have some gathering around the waistband, as well as some bust darts. You are also going to need a 16-inch invisible zip. So as for the difficulty, it's sort of an advanced, beginner, intermediate pattern. You do have to insert a zipper. That's probably, I'd say, probably the hardest part. And there is a little bit of gathering, but besides that, it's not too bad. Very achievable. Very beginner friendly, especially based on the fabrics that are recommended. So for us, we picked a lovely Swiss dot fabric, which is one of my favorite fabrics. We have it here in the baby pink. It does come in other colors. You are also going to need some interfacing, and like I said, a 16-inch invisible zip. You're also going to need a small little hook and eye. So like I said, if you like that fabric, you can click that through, and it also comes in other colors if you want to check those out as well. So the next pattern is the Sew Over It Meredith dress. So this pattern is a knit pattern. It's a wrap dress, obviously, as you can see. It's got little gathers at the side, similar to this dress, but in a jersey version. And it just ties across. Looks like you can make it in the shorter length, or the 3/4 length, or a full length. You could also obviously chop it to be a shorter length if that's more your style. So obviously, like I've mentioned, it comes from the size 8 to the 20, and it is a jersey fabric. I think the difficulties that you'll have really is just sewing with the fabric. There's a little bit of gathering there, so gathering a stretchy fabric into a seam can be a little bit difficult, but not too hard. The only difficulty would be the fabric, so it will depend on what sort of fabric you choose. So we've got another fabric here to recommend in the navy blue, this viscose jersey fabric. So like I was saying, viscose drape will drape beautifully, because this pattern is calling for a drapey fabric. You can check out any other colours if you would like to. It also comes in the gold. So for the fabric amount, you're going to need somewhere between 2.3 all the way up to 3.4, depending on your measurement. I have never made this dress. I have made the original wrap dress pattern, which is similar, but this is a bit more interest. It's got the gathers here, and it's more of a V neckline shape. So the next one is the penny dress, which seemed to be very popular when it first came out. When it first came out, I actually did make it really quickly because I was really keen on it. So the pattern itself, it is a shirt dress sort of style of pattern, but not fully shirt dress. So it does have like a little bit of a collar, but it's not a full collar with a collar stand and everything. It's more of a beginner friendly type collar. It also has gathering at the waist, but I have seen some people replace it instead of having the elastic, some people prefer to put ties in. They just prefer that. And it's got the buttons at the front and little gathering over here. So I have made that in a fabric, just a floral fabric. I can put my example up. I have made it twice in 2 different lengths. I shortened it. It is quite a long dress. So as for the size range, pretty standard, 8 to 20, as you would expect. In terms of difficulty, it's not a complete beginner pattern, but I thought this was really good to learn doing a bit of collars if you've never done a collar before. So we have a beautiful fabric to recommend, which I just realized I actually have made something in this fabric, not this particular pattern. The Liberty Lawn, Tana Lawn, this is a tongue twister, Liberty London Tana Cotton Lawn Fabric. There you go. I actually do have this fabric. I'll put the make that I made up so you can see how it sits. So it's a lawn, so it is a lightweight fabric. It's not as drapey as something like rayon, but it's not stiff by any means. So this is a great one for this pattern. We've got it here in the jade colour, which now I really want more, but it's such a beautiful fabric. If you see it in person, Liberty London fabric can be more expensive, but it is really beautiful, and the quality of the fabric is, you can feel it. It's there. It does come in another color if you want to check that out as well. So yeah, this is a really lovely pattern. It was a super popular pattern at the time when it first came out, and I can totally see why. So if you're interested in this pattern, let us know what you think if you don't have an account already. So the next pattern is the Sew Over It Pussy Bow blouse. I've never made this blouse, but it is a very popular pattern and I've always been intending to, but I just never got around to it. So this is a pattern blouse, obviously, and it has a little bit of a pussy bow tie at the front. I've always wanted to make one, but I don't know why I haven't gotten around to it. So obviously this comes in the 8 to 20, and I'll put those measurements up now. For the difficulty, the real difficulty here is in the fabric. Working with slippier, lighter weight, drapey fabrics, that's the difficulty. But there is also a bit of difficulty among the cuffs. That is a very fiddly thing to do. I have done it a few times myself. It's something I'd recommend you do after you've got a few sewing projects on your belt. So for fabric recommendations, we've got a lovely one here, for example. So we've got this suggestion, this double Georgette fabric in the red. So again, that's a completely woven fabric, and it's going to have a lot of drape. So other suggestions for fabrics are crepe de chine, sandwash silk, lightweight crepes and rayons. So if I was going to suggest this and you are a little bit worried on fabric, I would stick to a rayon first and then go to more of the silks and the crepe de chines and the georgettes, because rayon still is can be very difficult to work with sometimes, but it is definitely easier. Don't be too intimidated. It's easier just to work with than georgettes and crepe de chines and very, very lightweight fabrics. So that's all the patterns from Sew Over It that we have to talk through today. If any of these inspired you, let me know. Sew Over It's one of my favourite patterns. We'd be very interested to hear. I'd really love to hear if you've been inspired by any of these patterns, or you can save them for later. But see you next time. Bye.